It's the 11th of May and I'm talking to Eddie and Bessie Harmer at Harmer's Haven near Wonthaggi, and we're talking about early days on the Powlett, I'm just trying to work this out, on the Powlett River. Now, hold on. Now look, when did you come, Eddie? No, let me put it this way. How did your family come to Wonthaggi?
My father came and migrated out in 1910, and he came out to prepare the ground to bring Mum and my brother and myself out from England.
What part of England?
North of England, Durham. And when the time came, we came out by boat around the old way, Cape Horn, isn't it? Around the old way through there. And I can't tell you exactly how long we were on the sea because I was only 4-year-old.
Hang on, what year was it?
Beg pardon?
What year?
Now 1911.
You arrived and your father came 1910?
Yeah, 110. 1910 Dad came out.
And what did your father do in Durham?
He was a coal miner, and his father was a coal miner in the Durham coal mines.
And were any of your brothers, and they weren't grown up?
No, I only had one brother. I don't understand. Yeah. And when he came out, of course, if you can remember years gone by when the 8-hour day trouble was starting in England, well, certain times in England around the Durham coalfields and that were on strike in 21. I think it's
there was the 21, the big 21.
Yeah, remember that, but Dad was out in 1910 and he foreseen all the troubles of this because he was one of those sort of fellas who could look in a little bit ahead.
Was he a political person?
Not so much then, I don't think, because the politically down Durham was not a matter of, it was a matter of survival. And if you can understand that his mother, my grandmother, well, she had 13 children, that was my dad's mother, and she'd have to go into paddocks and snub turnips even to feed the kiddies, and what between the two of them to keep, well, body and soul together.
This was in the early years of this century?
Yes, this is in, I can't say that, 1910, would be 1910.
So what made you, and your father left Durham to better his family?
Yes, he tossed up whether he would go to Canada or Australia, and the coin come for Australia, so that's how he landed eventually in Wonthaggi. And like all the Durham miners and the Scotch miners and the Welsh miners and the Cornish miners, they were much sought of looked forward in the coal mines of Australia because they were experienced coal miners.
I don't suppose there were that many experienced coal miners in Australia.
No, there wouldn't. No, there was gold miners, but coal miners were different. That's the difference. Anyway, amongst them all the different nationalities, the Scottish and the Welsh and the Cornish and the Durham, and even the Australian miners in Rutherglen, the old early miners, they could make them adjust themselves more rapidly to the coal mining than the ordinary layman.
See, now, excuse me, Eddie, your father came in 1910.
Yeah.
Did you ever live in the tents, or was the town?
No, my dad, when he came out, we had a 2-skillion room place, and they'd be, I would say the size of them, best of my memory, would be for a 10 by 12 each room. No facilities in ways of like you would expect to get. There was no water laid on up at that end of the...
Where were you? What street?
Wishart Street, right up near the rifle bus, right at the extreme west end of Wonthaggi. No water laid on, and we used to have to, I can remember anyhow, as you asked the question with reference to, we were in 2-skillion houses.
I see. And there were how many in the family?
4.
Four kids?
No, Mum, Dad and 2 children.
Oh, that wasn't a very big family for was it?
No, well, I was 4 and my brother was just on 2, so
I see.
That's right.
So they migrated with a young family.
Yes, they're all young.
Yes, young family. And did they have any more children?
Yeah, 2 more, 2 daughters.
So there were 4
Well,
kids.
really 3. One died, Sylvia Pearl, and my other two sisters are still alive, Mavis and Eva.
I say.
They're still alive.
And your brother died?
My brother's alive.
Oh, the whole lot of you.
Yeah,
You're
all the
a
four
healthy,
alive.
living
Yeah.
family, aren't you?
That's right.
I see. So now, what's your earliest memory of Wonthaggi?
My early memories.
Yeah.
Well, I can only say for insurance, so I can be sure what I say, is the fact that when I first went to school, that'd be about 6, when I was 6. Well, that makes me 9. That makes me 13. Just a year before the war, I remember it well because I remember when the war broke out, what it was like in going to school and the hardships, etc., that was associated with wars. But I can remember going to school, and I remember starting school, and I can remember even the school teacher's name. And her name was Stent, and we called her Sticky Stent. And there was another one that even my wife recollects, Skinny Lawson. These are old spinsters. And also I can remember the Hefford brothers, Mr. Hefford, not brothers, one Jim Hefford I think his name was. He was a school. I remember those, and John Gartland, father and son. And I can remember those points.
It must have been a pretty big school already.
Oh, well, there was no, you could understand, it was made by Wonthaggi bricks. They were formed in the briculum right out in the outskirts with the place where the quarry was, and I seen those kilns making the bricks way in the early days. We used to go over there and get warm of a night time, and around like kids would go around when I was about 7 or 8, 6 and 7 or 8, around that early years. But anyway, that's what I can recollect as far as that part goes. But I can also recollect, if you bear up, the fact of going to school was one of the hardest things in the world in the winter, because there's certain things you had to step on to get across the roads, and if you didn't get on them, well, you'd fall up your knees in mud.
Why?
Because there was no roads.
Oh, and pretty muddy.
High
rainfall.
Heavy. It was well known for water, rainy Wonthaggi them days, rain and wind. It has been a controversy, is that the name of Wonthaggi, but that isn't so, I don't think, or I don't know, but I think it's an Aborigine name, might have another meaning, but it was always known as Wonthaggi meant rain and wind.
And tell me, did you enjoy school? Did you like school? Did you enjoy school?
Well, I'm like all boys. I can now I'm this way. I wish I was back at school again to learn more than I know now, you could understand. But when I'm like all boys, I hated the thought of going to school. I got caught many times playing the wag. They used to call it playing the wag. And we go swimming in the brick hills and the likes of that.
What do you say, go swimming in the brick hills?
In the brick hill, where there's a big quarry and you had water in it, and we used to go swimming when they took the clay out and filled it up with water. We used to swim in these places.
Well, I suppose there were big classes, lots of kids in the class.
Oh, well, it was all only, we went up to the 8th grade in the state school. There was the Catholic school was there, of course.
Yeah.
But there was no other schools, and there was, I think, the one away out Expo School. I can't recollect that too well. If it was only a little one.
Most of the kids were miners' kids, were they?
Yeah, mostly. Oh, no, very mixed. All the shop people and the business people had the school. All kids going to one school.
Well, the miners must have had a pretty big influence in the town, though, didn't they? I mean, there was always a lot of miners' kids.
Well, I would think at that time, the women was the first mothers' club that was ever associated with the school at Ironhob, and they were a very active body, and they got better as time went on, because I remember when the swimming pool was still there in the Wonthaggi State School, that my mother donated £1 towards that swimming pool, and if anybody can have any stretch of imagination knows what £1 meant them days, it was a pretty big gift.
When was that? Well, you weren't at school.
When I went to school, yes.
That was built when you went to school?
Yeah, when I was going to the state school, yes.
Oh, gee, that's interesting, because it must have been the first state school in Australia to have a swimming pool with unpaid.
There was a woman the women were the achievers of that.
Yes,
the women,
and the men, did the men go and dig it?
No, I can't tell you that. I couldn't say for sure or not. But anyhow, it's a beautiful pool. Of course, we've got a vastly improved swimming pool now in Wonthaggi, hot and cold.
But there wasn't any pool in those days. That was
No.
the only pool in the town.
Well, all bar the brick hills. Yeah, we used to go swimming in the quarry, as you like to call
They
it.
used to catch you. They used to chase you away.
Oh, too right. It wasn't a lack of. We used to swim in the nutties.
You'd nick off on hot days.
Yeah, we're only kids, of course.
You didn't go down to the sea, did you?
Oh, no, the sea?
Yeah.
Oh, I lived on the sea. I walked to the beach when I was 6-year-old.
Which way down the Cape?
No,
Yeah.
straight out here past the rifle range, past Lake Lister. And that was our life when we got to know about when we got big and we wasn't frightened of the bush, you understand? I can see old Mr. Cutler now, old George. He was a big tall man. We used to walk behind him. And he had big strides, and we'd have to run to keep up with him on this little narrow track. And he wouldn't come on, you young'uns, come on, keep up with me, or get home. And but anyhow, that's the way it was.
Who was Mr. Cutler?
Mr. Cutler, old Mr. Cutler.
Was he a teacher?
No, a miner. Old George, they called him. Old George Cutler. Your father of Jim Cutler, now still alive in Wonthaggi. And the rocks, the Cutler's Rocks along the beach was named after old George Cutler.
Did he used to take the kids out there swimming, did he?
No, he wouldn't bother much with you.
But you could go if you wanted.
He'd go out with you and then he'd go fishing and you could enjoy yourself. And as long as you had the billy boy for his cup of tea when he come back, everything would be okay. He liked his cup of tea.
Now where was this, Eddie?
Even?
Where would this...
Just up here.
Just up past Harmer's Haven.
Yeah, quarter of a mile past Harmer's. Cutler's Rocks, they call it.
I see, you get down there onto the rocks.
Yeah, very, very well known.
And would you swim there?
Oh, yes.
In the rock pools or that?
Now, you'll read in some of the papers I've gave to you, Wendy, that by Gordon Ross, one of the earliest possible figures that's ever in Wonthaggi, him and Stumptini and the likes of them, Paddy Webb and them, you'll find out in one of the Gordon Ross says that you could go out, walk out the beach in those days, and you could put your pointed stick and spear the crays off the shore. Now, we have known the crayfish been close on the shore in the rock holes. In the years gone by, it was no effort at all to get the cray.
You'd catch a cray out.
Oh, well, I never bothered about it them days because I wasn't interested in them, but these old timers were, because crayfish, wasn't as ate so much as it is today because it was so common, if you can understand, so plentiful. That'd be the best way to put it. Well, Wonthaggi Beach was very plentiful for food, fish and
Were you
shellfish.
a fisherman? Did you ever go out in a boat and fishing?
No, not boats. But Jim Cutler did. He was a fisherman. He had a boat from Cutler's Bay up further up, near Cutler's Rocks rather. And he had a boat, and he used to go when the mine was on strike. Jim would be out there, and his cobbers, a fellow called Pup Owens and Rossi. Out they'd go to launch the boat and out and get the crays, set the pots, get the nets, and come into Wonthaggi and sell the crays. A form of helping them along through the strike periods and the whole family. But if you can understand too that the cray today, that where you pay anything up to $10 a kilo, those days you'd be lucky if you got two bob for £4 or £5 crays. See, that's how common they were.
Listen, before we get off to your school days, was there much physical, did they belt you at school? Did you get the strap?
Many times. If you didn't, I don't know, now we're getting into something there. Well, my brother-in-law too, Jimmy Borden, that's Bessie's brother, he wouldn't salute the flag in the quadrangle, and he was isolated, and he got the strap time Monday after Monday, because you had to salute the flag, sing God Save the King in those days, you see.
And why didn't he want it?
He didn't really, he didn't believe it, he didn't want it. He was one of those rebels at that time.
Why? That's your brother?
Yes.
Well, why wouldn't he? Was your family
He
against
said, I'm not saluting those.
buckers?
Yes, that's right.
But why was your family were your family opposed to it, or was it just him?
No, he was just, that was his way. Yes.
He was cranky.
He just wouldn't, he doesn't believe in those sort of people. He said, they're a lot of bludgers, they get their money for nothing.
Your family weren't particularly radical, were they? Was your father
No, Dad, no.
wouldn't have supported that? Your
Dad
father
was just a minor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your father wouldn't have encouraged that.
No,
Your
Dad
brother
wouldn't. My brother did. He was a
Even
trimmer.
at school, even at primary school, he was like that, wasn't he?
He was right through. Even in the pictures when they used to stand up, you know, for the Queen or the King or whoever it was, he wouldn't get up. No way. Oh God.
There was a lot of us a lot like that in the school those days. Now, when the war broke out that's
First World War?
14, you see, well, Jim, my brother-in-law, 6 months older than me, and he'd be 7 and a half when the war broke out, and I'd be 7. Well, I never liked that shooting the fag, but I was a bit more timid than he was, I suppose, and he was a pugnacious sort of a lad, and he had a mind set on his own. He wouldn't take no notice of anybody, just do the way he wanted to do. Now, that created all sorts of things in the school that you're talking about, and lots of sides in the school, because there used to be the flag flappers and the objectionists. I better put them to the flag flappers. I better put it that way. It used to be commonly called red rags or bulgies or something like that. But it used to develop into one stage in school. I remember very well during the war. It must have been about 16 or 17. When the lads, that's the ones who were pugnacious and their fathers were more militant, and they didn't belong to the town mob, you know. There's the miners' mob and the town mob, if you can understand. The two different sections. Those who were in the, what they call petty bourgeois or middle class, as you put it. Well, they'd always fist fights up the sand pit we used to go, and that was on Flea Hill. Into the sandpit, and generally was a fight between one of those and one of our mob, and
There was a definite division between town and mob.
Definitely. It got that way. It got that way that we went to school with little bits of red rags sewn under our lapel of our Guernsey or wherever we had, and the others had a bit of blue, you see, and the Reds were fighting the Blues, if you can understand.
Was this during the war?
Yeah, during the war. Oh, yeah, this was very prevalent.
Was there a big division in the town over do you remember the anti-conscription in the First World War?
This was bad here in Wonthaggi at one time. Well, my father was called a pro-German. Pro-German, yeah. Oh,
Was your father opposed to the war?
He opposed very much to the war, very much, you know. And he was a member of the OBU.
One big union?
Yeah, the one
IWW?
Yeah, IWW. He was a secretary. And of course, for whatever your father says, the kid you got to do is he'll clout you behind the ears. So the least of the two evils, you sooner fight the kid in the street. You see what I mean? Anyway, that's the way it went on in school, and there was always that. There were some real stand-up fights. Well, I can remember one. I was a lad, about 12-year-old, and know it very well. And the town mob was coming up to beat our mob. That was up our way, up the west end and the east. They call them down, not the east. East end was good. Down the town mob. And they were going to fight our mob, and we knew they were going to fight our mob. So we dug bits of trenches, and we had Shanghais. And stones to throw, you know, heaps of little stones like ammunition. See. And they came up this bit of a hill just the bottom end of Wishart Street or Brown Street, and they had tin swords and wooden swords. Of course, when they come up and they got met with these things from Shanghai, well, one of them unfortunately got his eye knocked out. And lost his eye. And when I went back to school, you know, after that was a weekend on the Monday, the head teacher, John Gartland, called us all to get by. He gave us a dressing down. All of us, the whole lot of us, and any more of this will be severely dealt with due to the loud looting, the police be intervening and everything. It got really nasty. Oh, it was a real bit of a show at times, but that's how things, they'd go in the street, and when anybody got up to speak in favour of the war, and all the others, Jack Goldsmith especially, he was one of the leaders. I remember him as a kid, and he'd get up there and he'd trounce on it, or because he was a real dinky-dyed socialist of those days, a fighter, and to the best of my knowledge, and and if the band started to play any tunes like the boys would blurt them and suck lemons, and they'd do anything in front of the band.
There was an anti-war movement an anti-war sort of group or feeling amongst the miners.
Anti-war, oh yeah, definitely anti-war, yeah.
Amongst the miners,
yeah.
and of course the conscription referendums were defeated, weren't they?
That's right, they were defeated.
There was a lot of feeling about
it.
Yeah,
yes. Well, I remember, I remember attending a socialist Sunday school. Well, not because if I wanted to, because, well, Dad said I had to. The OBU, and one of the teachers was Jack Goldsmith, another one was a fella called Tan, quite a few of the old real militants, Billy McNamara and the likes of those fellas. And I remember it well that we learnt that war was no good, and I learnt as early lessons of how civilization was, like the trees and the caves, and how we went on and on and on, and they used to pound this into us, a reference to this, and the songs came out. I don't know if you remember any of them, the Red Flag and Solidarity Forever and all those old time...
The old IW wobbly songs.
Yeah, wobbly songs all came out, and we used to sing them. And if we wanted to aggravate
that glorious land beyond the sky.
And if we wanted to aggravate any side, and then we'd sing that song, and there'd be lumps of dirt flying and everything.
But there must have been a few of you, or you wouldn't have done it. I mean, there was a group.
Oh yeah, we had a pretty good mob. See, well, they were mostly the ones who suffered the hardship, if you can understand. The environment at home was hard, like as I've said before to other people, that Lord, the rabbits, you understand, the rabbit was helped us to survive.
This was in your childhood?
Yeah.
Now, but your father worked regular, didn't he?
Oh, well, yeah, but the wages wasn't any good, and things were dear in the war, especially during the war. We never had white sugar, we never had boots. We were lucky to have a pair of boots, and we had to put up with anything to survive.
Did your mother have a hard life?
Oh, very, yeah, much so. Mum had to take boarders in to make ends meet, and yes, and I used to have to carry the water, I remembered, from when Mum was washing. She'd get the old kerosene tins outside. We didn't have a copper for a start. We had the kerosene tins outside and standing on bricks with a bar and a wood fire underneath it. And I used to have to go down to Bergen Spring. Now, Bergen Spring was at the bottom of a hill in Agglethorne Street, on the corner of Agglethorne Street and Brown Street. And they had a beautiful spring there. We all got our water from there on this area, because we were the last to get water laid on. We have to carry this water for Mum to wash and to drink, and if the tanks run dry. You understand, we had one tank. But that was how hard it was, and Mum had to go out in the rain and wash, and it was a pretty... My mother died very young due to the hard work. She died when she was 59.
No.
49.
Now, would your father have... he was working in the mine all this time. I suppose he'd come home with his clothes filthy and...
Oh, yeah, there was no...
No bathroom? Did you have a bathroom?
My father, there was some sort of facilities at the mine then for my father to wash and that in, wasn't there? If I remember...
Your father never worked in the mine that long, did he?
He had
an accident with his
he worked in the mine, and of course, like he was a man that was under pressure all the time due to his beliefs, and he went up to South Coast and worked in Bulli at New South Wales.
Left you here, or did you
Yeah,
go to Bulli
he
too?
no, left us and he went up there. But the conditions up there were terrible. When you could only get 10 pence per tonne for filling coal, slack coal following the machines, well, he made hard to make ends meet. Well, he couldn't take that. Then he came back, and he was in the mine again. Then he met an accident in Station Area. That was a mine right near the station. The wheeler was knocking the prop up, and he missed the prop and hit the dad with the axe, nearly cut his arm off. And he was 9 months. Well, we had the compensation was very, very low, about 22 bob or 23 bob or something. And he had the family. Well, we had to make ends meet. We had to do all sorts of things. I used to go and trap rabbits and sell rabbits.
In those days, what would he have been earning?
10, oh, not much. You've got the award rate.
Yeah, I think it was 10 bob a day when
10
they
10 and
started.
8 pence. 10 and 8
And was that 5 days a week or 6?
Yeah, no, in the early days, in the very early days of Gordon Ross and Co. and my dad too, they were working 7 days and time and a half for Sunday.
Oh, I see.
That's 15 bob a day they got for
So it'd
Sunday.
be about £3.15
yeah,
or something.
Yeah, that's right. See.
Ah, yeah. And did they build a bigger house, or did you go
Oh,
on living in the 2 rooms?
Dad was a very able man. He was a pretty good carpenter, and he built 2 rooms and made the skillion into a hip roof, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we all did a bit, like, but Dad then drifted from the mine and worked as a carpenter for an agent called Piggott, and he built a lot of places in Wonthaggi. Yeah, then he drifted from that, my dad, and became a bottler. Gathering, he was a second-hand dealer, and then he drifted from that and went on to a fruit round.
Wasn't your father in the mine during the Depression?
No.
He did.
No.
Living with Eddie's father.
But he wasn't in the mine.
No,
he
he
was
was a
doing something
bottler.
else.
Bottler.
Was he making any dough?
Making anything?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
He'd better have been
now,
bottler, did he?
he was scratching even, I would like to say. He was about scratching even because he wasn't a very hard worker in them days. He got a bit slack.
He'd given up work, had
He
he?
gave a fair lot of it away.
Yeah,
And I was on the dole. Now you're getting away from the early days, like my childhood, into the time when the things was tough. But they all dovetail. And the point is that we were married on a dole, and we had our children on a dole, and we lived with my father on the dole, and Bessie's father came and lived with Bessie because he wouldn't live nowhere else. So we had the 2 fathers there, and as we were there, and a sort of a community basis, see?
All in one house.
In the one house, oh yeah, but
Didn't you all get sick of each other?
Dad had a little sleep.
he had a little sleep out. We had a room of our own. My brother had a room of his own. My father had a room of his own.
what about the kids? Living with you.
The girls.
And they finished up with a room, didn't they? The 2 girls, the boys. Anyway,
Is it?
my father, due to that period of that time, he didn't want to do much at all. Really stopped nearly, see. So I went in with my brother, left the crack railway in 1938, I think 39 or something like that, and went with my brother in his place on the conditions that we allow him something off the business we're in, the transport business, and he would be able to relieve himself of any responsibilities, and he would get the pension.
I see. Now, we've got a bit ahead of ourselves, as you were saying. Now, hang on. So you left school. Now, wait a minute. You went to school throughout the war.
Yeah.
Now, you'd have been born in 1907, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right.
So, how old were you when you left school?
14.
You left the day you could, did you?
Now wait a
Tell
minute.
me
Now
that.
this is was part I think that you're after. I left school when I was 14, and I worked on a tea cart for a man called Billy Trevilian. And he was a semi-blind fella who couldn't drive his horse, and I got the job of driving his horse, and he sold his tea and coffee and all those little small goods all around Wonthaggi and around Daleston, Exborough, Dudley, and even as far as Kilcunda.
It was sort of a travelling
Yeah, that's
salesman,
right. That's
yes.
right. Now, I got 15 shillings a week for that, to driving his cart around. That was 44 hours a week. And that 15 shillings coming into the house, Mum used to give me, I think, two bob, I think, for my pocket money, and Mum would have the other. And it was a great help to us at them times.
That was the end of the war.
That's the end of the war. No, that would be in, let me see.
If you were born 1904.
That's 7, that's 21, I think it'd
21,
be. 21,
right.
21, yeah, that's right.
And it was still hard times.
It was still, oh my, there was not so much, there was a big strike, there was a lot of trouble. There was always trouble in Wonthaggi.
Tell us about when you were a child, were there strikes continual? I mean, what sort of trouble was there in
Wonthaggi?
Yeah.
Oh, well, this manager, McLeish, and even his predecessors, but he was the worst. If they wanted to get the wheat in or the wool in, this is when I was young, he'd sack somebody unintentionally, cause a big blue, and they'd have all the mines would go out on strike. They were forced to go out on strike. They got the name for being the strikers, but they weren't the cause of it. It was him, because he wanted to use all the trucks to get the wheat harvested.
It was because the railways owned the mines.
They owned the mine, you see, so
they'd say, we want
the
trucks.
wheat, yeah, and so you better stop them, but we don't want to lock them out. And now you understand what I mean? So that's how cunning they were. There's no lockout pay, no nothing. Pull on that imaginary thing, force the miners to go out, due to couldn't lose the principle, because once you do, well, that's the end of all things. Well, that happened time and time and time again. Then if there was any repairs to be done in the powerhouse, such as a boiler had to be placed, or these big transformers or whatever it was, he'd pull on another blue, so he could get this work done in the powerhouse, and the miners would get the blame.
Keeping the costs down.
Yes, he was a very, very bad man.
It might have been the railways pushed him, mightn't it? I mean, the railways probably told him to do it.
Oh, yeah, he had to do what he was told. Otherwise he'd get out and someone else, they'd put him in. But he was a pretty willing servant. Yeah. And not only that, he went further. He'd add a little bit more to it too. He had one, I remember my father coming home, and a lot of the miners, I'm not only quoting my father, there was dozens of miners were the same. They'd come home and they'd drop down in the street. They're absolutely done. And because they'd be working their slaving down, working their heart out in the mine, where they couldn't make wages too good. And he'd come in and reckon they weren't half a man. He'd come in the board and say, you're not half a man. I can get men to do twice as much at you. And the saying was that there's no deficient places for you to win coal. You are deficient men. And he put down as that, and then he said, now, just to do you a good turn, I'll give you a month's spell. And he put you on the grass, and you got nothing for a month.
He could do that, could he?
Oh, he did it.
What about the union?
Yeah, well, we weren't as strong as then, understand, when we'd fight all the time, but eventually they'd get back, you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I see.
But,
so there was a lot of pin pricking?
Oh, very much so, very, very much.
Yeah, it was never really a satisfactory mine to work, was